So today we're going to talk about David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, one of the most influential albums of all time because it influenced the punk scene as a proto-punk album, also the glam rock scene of the 80s, a hugely influential record. That also was a concept album that was never really a concept album, or was it? It was 50 years ago that the world was introduced to Ziggy Stardust, David Bowie's iconic early 70s alter ego. Ziggy was the titular character in Bowie's 1972 masterpiece album, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, a record which charted completely new waters in popular music, bringing together diverse genres and kicking off the worlds of glam rock and proto-punk. Hello there, it's Warren Hewitt here. I hope you're doing marvellously well. Welcome back to another episode of this series. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and if you hit the notification bell, you'll be notified when we have a new video. And if you're into production, you can go to producelikeapro.com and sign up for the email list and get a whole bunch of free goodies. David Bowie was born David Robert Jones in Brixton, England in 1947. He first began recording and performing under the name Davy Jones in the mid-60s, but eventually changed to David Bowie to avoid confusion with Davy Jones of the Monkees. From the beginning, his music stood apart from the crowd and explored many different styles, from blues to the diverse interests of mods. His first album was not very commercially successful, and his first breakthrough hit came from his second album, his timely 1969 Space Oddity, a haunting track that explored the darker, more anxious side of space travel and was released just ahead of the first moon landing. As he moved into the 70s, Bowie started experimenting with different stage personas, one of which was Ziggy Stardust. He also started exploring darker thematic concepts and harder rock sounds. Ziggy's character was groundbreaking, an androgynous alien rock star from Mars who had come to save the world.
I wanted to define the archetype Messiah rock star. That's all I wanted to do. And I used the trappings of kabuki theater, mime technique, fringe New York music, like my references were Velvet Underground. Right. So Ziggy was, for me, a very simplistic thing. It was what it seemed to be, an alien rock star.
But for audiences, Ziggy was so much more. As the album introduced more background information on the character, and as he developed across Bowie's stage shows, David Bowie became Ziggy Stardust in the eyes of the public. 5 Years, the album's opening track, introduces the dramatic and conceptual ideas of the album, Earth's collapse and the reactions of the people as they learn they only have 5 more years left to live. The song has a lilting feel, and the repetition of the 5 years chorus occurs several times in the song. The chorus and its bright block chords on the piano create a dizzying, almost carousel-like effect. We got 5 years stuck on my... Soul Love goes in a different direction musically. 5 Years and Soul Love are rhythmically similar, but Soul Love uses different percussive effects, including hand clapping and hand drums. The addition of the brass instruments and the brighter musical arrangement give a more optimistic tone, despite the fact that the song is still detailing reactions of humans to Earth's demise. Only this time, the lyrics focus on their actions of love towards one another. You love a boy and girl, they're talking. With Moon Age Daydream, we are finally introduced to Ziggy Stardust, who has come to save the world. The song was actually originally recorded in 1971 and released under Bowie's short-lived band, Arnold Corns. He reimagined the song for Ziggy Stardust with a new first verse, introducing the character as an alligator, mama papa, space invader, and rock and roll. The new version, recorded in a lower key, is vocally stronger for Bowie and is performed with a confident swagger that fits his Ziggy persona perfectly. With Starman, Ziggy introduces the people of Earth to their first sense of hope. He explained to beat writer William S. Burroughs in a conversation for Rolling Stone magazine in 1973, Ziggy is advised in a dream by the Infinites to write The Coming of a Starman. So he writes Starman, which is the first news of hope the people have heard. So they latch onto it immediately. The Starman that he is talking about are all called the Infinites, and they are black hole jumpers. Ziggy has been talking about this amazing spaceman who will be coming down to save the Earth. They arrive somewhere in Greenwich Village. They don't have a care in the world, and they are of no possible use to us. They just happen to stumble into our universe by black hole jumping. Their whole life is traveling from universe to universe. In the stage show, one of them resembles Brando. Another one is a black New Yorker. I even have one called Queenie the Infinite Fox. It starts out mellow with acoustic guitar and Bowie's gentle vocals, but it builds as the song progresses, adding keyboard, string orchestration, and guitar solos. Its iconic chorus still resonates with generations today.
There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come.
The song is a fantastic blurring of rock and roll nostalgia with contemporary, fully orchestrated songwriting. The song ends with a fuzzy guitar solo while Bowie sings nonsensical la-la lyrics in a sound reminiscent of early rock and roll and doo-wop. Yet the orchestration and thematic concepts are clearly post-60s songwriting. It Ain't Easy represents a departure from the rest of the album. Written by American singer-songwriter Ron Davies, it's the only cover song in the entire album. And it had been covered before. Released in 1970 by Davies, it was also covered by Three Dog Night the same year on their album of the same name. Lyrically, it's reflective of changing environments and times. The song has more of an American country-influenced sound to it, with a harder guitar song on the chorus. Despite being a cover, never intended by its author for the context of Ziggy's apocalyptic Earth, in the hands of Bowie and his musicians, the song fits into the raw rock and roll mythology of the album. Lady Stardust brings us back to a heavy piano track with clear musical similarities to Elton John's work of the same time. It opens with lyrics that nod to glam rock as Bowie sings, "People stared at the makeup on his face, laughed at his long black hair and animal grace." Glam rock was an emerging style at this time, and certainly Bowie made his mark on this style through Ziggy and other performative works. But he wasn't the first artist to explore costumes, stage, personas, and makeup. And this song idealizes that particular scene. It also has an air of tragedy to it. The piano part is almost sentimental as lyrics and melody, especially chorus, nostalgically remember a past musical experience.
And he was all right. The band was all
Star builds up the energy again with its pulsating keyboard part, an early rock and roll energy. Like the ending of Starman, it incorporates nonsensical vocal parts, this time very much in the style of doo-wop and early rock and roll background vocals.
so inviting.
The lyrics directly address the idea of becoming a rock and roll star, and in the context of Ziggy show the challenges he faced in coming to Earth to save people who no longer wanted rock and roll. In his conversation with Burroughs, Bowie explained, "Ziggy is in a position where all the kids have access to things they thought they wanted. The older people have lost all touch with reality, and the kids are left on their own to plunder anything. Ziggy was in a rock and roll band, and the kids no longer wanted rock and roll." Hang On to Yourself is another song originally recorded and released under the Bowie band, Arnold Corns. Like Moon Age Daydream, it was reimagined and re-recorded for inclusion on Ziggy Stardust. The lyrics in the verses are quite different from the Arnold Corn version. In the Ziggy version, it specifically references the Spiders from Mars, which is the name of Ziggy's rock and roll band. It continues the rock and roll energy of Star, but with a more aggressive proto-punk edge. While both versions are guitar-driven with its classic riff, the Ziggy version has a harder edge and, in fact, has been credited with influencing the Sex Pistols' God Save the Queen. The bass line, according to Sex Pistols' Glenn Matlock, also influences his playing on No Feelings from the band's debut album. It isn't until halfway through the second side that we finally get to Ziggy's title track. The song was written in 1971, around the same time as Lady Stardust. The song gives a portrait of Ziggy's character and is incredibly descriptive. In addition to his physical appearance, the song describes that he played guitar left-handed. And many interpretations connect this reference to Jimi Hendrix, especially since later in the song he sings, "Ziggy played for time, jiving us that we were voodoo." The song is a narrative masterpiece, so that by the end of it, we have a very clear understanding of the many facets of the Ziggy character. But it's also musically fascinating. The guitar part played by Mick Ronson is such an iconic riff. You hear it and you know the song instantly. It's also got that great fuzzy tone, but not a jingly, jangly 60s tone or a clean, polished one, or even a hard rock Led Zeppelin tone. Apparently, it's a 100-watt Marshall with a wah-wah pedal. I'm not sure how he would have used a wah, but he may have had it set at a sound just to give that mid-range kind of scoopy sound. But we have the great Jamie Humphries here to show us how to play the part.
Hi everyone, Jamie Humphries here, and Warren has asked me to take a look at the Mick Ronson guitar parts heard on the classic David Bowie track Ziggy Stardust. Now obviously there's an acoustic guitar part that's playing throughout, but we've chosen to take a look at those iconic electric parts performed by Mick Ronson. Now to try and capture the tone as best I can, today I'm using a Les Paul Gold Top. I'm running into my Helix where I'm using a bright channel plexi. I've got a wah-wah in front of that, and I've just sort of blended the wah-wah in so it's not too intense. And another thing that I've also done is I've used the ADT delay, which is like an auto double track. The parts on the original are double tracked. To me, it sounds like one guitar has the wah-wah on, and then there's a slightly cleaner guitar in the other side that doesn't have the wah-wah, and it's a blend of the two. So to try and get a little bit of that feel, I'm using the ADT to give me a little bit of sort of artificial double tracking. Okay, so let's kick things off by looking at the main riff. I'll play it first of all. Now, this section is double tracked on the original recording. I've chosen to show what I think is the more prominent part with the chord arpeggios. We start off with the G major chord. Now, we jump up to a D major and we add the sus4 with our little finger. I must confess, I always thought it was played in the open position, but watching some videos of Mick Ronson, you can clearly see that he's holding an A shape of a D major. So he kind of rakes across the chord. You're raking across and then adding your little finger. Then we drop down to a C add 9 and you're pedaling off of the root note to the B string and then the G string, and you're just sort of dropping the root note down. So you're playing the C add 9, then a G over B, and then we have the open A, so it's like an A7 sus4. So you put that together. Play that slowly. And then we're back to the G major chord. Now over that section, the double track guitar is just simply playing, playing the chords that accompany, whilst on the other side, you've got those chord arpeggios. Now that guitar part is one of those iconic riffs. It's really straightforward, but incredibly memorable. Okay, on to the next section. I'll play it through for you first of all. Into the verse section. This is quite a sparse section for the electric guitar, and I love the way that you can hear Mick sort of turning the guitar up and down, and sometimes, as he holds a chord, you start to get the feedback coming in. You can really get the sense of him standing there in front of a cranked up amp. We start off with the G major chord. We then have this overdubbed little harmony section, the lower harmony. Okay, so you're pulling off, and then back up to that C note over the C chord. And we have the other figure. Okay, so you have those two harmonies together. Then we have this climbing figure from the C up to the D, and then a slide, and then sliding from the A, and then back down to the G. And at that point, when he holds that G note, he's sort of lightly brushing notes from the G major chord. Okay, then we drop down F sharp, and then he's implying E minor during this section. He doesn't really play an E minor. I sort of played an E note just to underpin the sound of the harmony. We have these two harmonics, one at the 12th, one at the 7th, and then back to the 12th. A5, C5. Okay, then we go around again, G major chord. Then he plays a B minor 7th at this section. Now, I watched a video of Mick explaining this part, and he appears to sort of hold the chords like this with his thumb over the top. So all you're really hearing is that sort of brushed D major triad implying that B minor 7th harmony. So we brush across the middle 3 strings, drop down to the C, have that same figure again. And then down to the G, and once again we sort of brush notes from the chord. F sharp. Now this time we hold the E minor, and he arpeggiates through the E minor chord. So A5, and we start to build. And then up to the C5 chord, and we start to build further. And that's leading us into the chorus. Now, obviously, with the builds and some of the way that this is performed, I'm sort of putting my own sort of artistic interpretation to it, if you like. I think it would be impossible for you to nail every single different pick stroke. But, that's the kind of basic idea of what's going on. It's a nice, sparse part with some little melodic phrases, that nice harmony, the creative use of harmonics. It's a really great example of how Mick Ronson would take a relatively straightforward chord progression and embellish it. Okay, so finally we have the chorus section. I'll play it through for you. So the chorus section is based around some power chords, but once again, I've sort of used a slight bit of, I guess, artistic guesswork in terms of how he would play these chords and trying to reference what he does on videos. I can't really say whether he's playing that A5 in that open position, but just judging by other videos I've seen how he holds power chords, I would imagine that he's holding the power chord in this way with his thumb over the top and just playing the lower portions. We have the A5. To me, it makes more sense that he would just move that shape instead of... Although I could be wrong. I've chosen to play it here. I think keeping the consistent shape makes the riff a little bit easier as you're just moving the same shape around. Down to G5. So down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down. Very, very tight rhythm that. And then we're playing the F5 and we're taking the F root note away to expose the open E. And then back up to the G5 and we repeat. One more time. This time we go up to the D major chord. Now we're playing some palm mutes, or some rhythmic mute shots, should I say. And then up to the E5, playing a syncopated rhythm, a lot of emphasis on the upstrokes in between the mutes. And then we return back down to the G major for the main riff. So just to finish things off, I'm going to put all three riffs together, and a second me is going to jump in to play the guitar harmony during the verse.
Bowie's playing the acoustic guitar on this. And have a listen to this. What I love about this part is, first of all, it's a bit out of tune, let's be honest. So it rubs against Mick Ronson's incredible guitar part that he puts in the suspended fourth on the D. I mean, there's a rub. Does it matter? It didn't matter when I was a kid. When my ears got more sophisticated, I suppose it bothered me. But I suppose there's just something kind of punk rock about it. We talk about proto-punk. I think a lot of that comes from the Velvet Underground, which, of course, Bowie was a huge fan of, and Lou Reed. And there's definitely, to me, they're the pioneers of proto-punk. But this takes it, this starts putting it front of center, because in the UK and Europe, this was a huge album, and Ziggy's character was massively influential. The look and the makeup became what we now regard as being glam rock. Now, I've read that there was a wah-wah pedal on it. It could be, because if you take a wah-wah and then you just tilt it to a certain position, you can get a pure mid-range tone. And it feels like it's that. So it's quite simple. Acoustic guitar, electric guitar, obviously doubled. I love that it goes up and plays an octave of the sus4. Ba-be-da-be-da-da. Again, some tuning issues. It's rock and roll. It's rock and roll. Bass line doesn't come in till the first two times on the riff. Then it comes in. One of the things I always find interesting is people always debate about modern music being too compressed. And I always tell them that all the guys I've worked with that recorded in the 60s and 70s in particular use far more compression than I would ever use. And I work with Jack Douglas and guys like that who made some of the greatest albums ever. They maybe put far more compression going in and onto tape than I normally would do. And if you listen, for instance, to that acoustic, like every chord is just grah. It's not grah, doesn't decay off quickly. It's taking that front part and probably doing 9 dB worth of gain reduction on the front of it. Same with the electric, which is, going through a Marshall 100 watt. It's squashed. It's just grah. You just hear that chord sustaining because the whole front transient's just annihilated. And then listen to the bass, you'll hear the initial pick of the bass. And then after that initial attack comes through, tons of compression. Pung, pung. It's great. Put the three things together and it's just beautiful. Absolutely fantastic. But again, it's talking about how much compression was actually being used. And you can tell that's a compressor doing it because the transient's coming through. If the tape was doing it, the transient would be more rolled out by the tape. Let's go and listen to Mick Woodmansey's or Woody Woodmansey's drums. Listen to all that bleed of all the musicians in the same room. I love how Woody frames everything that's going on in the vocals and the music, like, and the spiders from Mars. There's a tendency now with modern drumming, modern songwriting, especially in rock, to be honest, to just play a groove all the way through. This is a song drummer. Woody is a song drummer. In fact, if we put in Bowie's vocals, you'll hear exactly what I mean.
Now Ziggy played guitar, jamming good with Weird and Gilly and the spiders from Mars. He played it left hand, but made it too far.
Perfect groove.
Became the special man.
Just fits Bowie's vocals
then we
perfectly.
were Ziggy's band. Ziggy really sang, screwed up eyes and...
And in classic Bowie mode, there's so many different personalities. He's like, Ziggy really sang. And then he comes in and he's got this intimate vocal.
Became the special man.
Attitude.
Then we were Ziggy's band.
And then you come to this.
Ziggy really sang, screwed up eyes and screwed down hairdo, like some cat from Japan. He could lick 'em by smiling, he could leave 'em to hang. We came on so loaded, man, well hung and snow.
More personality.
Tan. So where were the spiders?
Another personality.
So where were the spiders? While the fly tried to break our bones, just the beer like to guide us. So we bitched about his fans, and should we crush his sweet hands?
Bowie had an amazing range, but it's so much more than that. It's the character in his vocals. To me, he's one of the greatest singers that ever lived because, first of all, you instantly recognize him. Interestingly, he sings with a very heavy English accent, where most of us, myself included, when you put a mic in front of me, I fake an American accent. There's something the way that American English just sings so well, those softer T's and those exaggerated R's, Mick Jagger would do is like, I'm down in you, trying to be American, but then slips into the London. Bowie was just full-blown London. He had that A sound, just for today. And it gives him so much personality. I think probably only him, Freddie Mercury, very heavy English accent, and of course, Damon from Blur really sounds super, super English. But Bowie, above all, has so much character. But with Mick Ronson's incredible guitar playing and that interplay between the lead singer and the guitar god on stage, the way they interacted with each other, particularly obviously at this period, pretty darn unique. Cannot underestimate Woody's groove. What a great drum part that bridges. If you're a drummer and you want to learn some groove playing, song structure, really supporting the song structure, learn this drum part. It's really fantastic. It supports all of the parts uniquely and the vocal. Just great, great work from Woody. Woody Woodmansey is really completely underrated as a drummer. He should be talked about far more often. The vocals have a sort of echoey, reverby sound on the verses, but it's also interesting that the texture of the vocals, along with the melody, is really what indicates the chorus, because the two choruses don't actually have the same lyrics, which is pretty unusual. So if we call this the first chorus.
So where were the spiders? While the fly tried to break our bones.
I mean, it's the chorus or the bridge. So this section, which is the... In one section, it's this.
So where were the spiders? While the fly tried to break our bones. Just the beer like to get.
And then the next time around, it's this.
Making love with his ego. Ziggy is sucked up into his mind. Like a leather messiah. When the kids had killed the man, I had to break up the band.
Fantastic. It's got it all. Hooky guitar riff that every kid I know learned to play. Our version of this. That with the... Just absolutely superb. Hooky guitar riff, amazing drum part. Trevor Boulder's incredible. Bass playing, mirroring the guitar part, holding down the vocal melody, supporting everything. And of course, Bowie's incredibly expressive vocals. I mean, what a title track from what an incredible record. Suffragette said he really brings together the glam rock, the hard rock, and the proto-punk in a high-energy track. It's certainly guitar-driven, but the pounding Little Richard style piano also gives it some of that early rock and roll vibe. One of the most memorable moments in the song is the false ending, where Bowie exclaims, "Wham bam, thank you ma'am," before the band launches back into the song's groove.
Wham bam, thank you ma'am.
This line directly references a Charles Mingus track, while other lyrics reference Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange or the Velvet Underground's White Light, White Heat. Rock and Roll Suicide, the final song on the album, details Ziggy's ultimate demise. In the narrative, the infinites described in the song Starman have finally come down to earth. Bowie explained, when the infinites arrive, they take bits of Ziggy to make themselves real, because in their original state, they are antimatter and cannot exist on our world. They tear him to pieces on stage during the song Rock and Roll Suicide. As soon as Ziggy dies on stage, the infinites take his elements and make themselves visible. It's a science fiction ending appropriate for its age, an age fascinated by space travel while also expressing fear of an apocalyptic future. Bowie captured all of these fears, excitements, and fascinations and managed to weave it into a groundbreaking musical album. As Bowie told journalists in 1973, I'm really just a phosphate machine. I pour out what has already been fed in. I merely reflect what is going on around me. The rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars was recorded at Trident Studios in London. The sessions began on the 8th of November 1971, very quickly after finishing Bowie's previous masterpiece album, Hunky Dory. The album featured the talents of Mick Johnson on electric guitar, piano, and backing vocals. Ronson is also credited with arranging the string parts. Trevor Bolder played bass, and Mick Woody Woodmansey played drums. Although Rick Wakeman had left the group prior to the album's production, some sources credit him with harpsichord on It Ain't Easy. The album was produced by Bowie and Ken Scott. Scott is also credited as the engineer and with mixing the album. It was released by RCA on June the 16th, 1972. Despite its incredible success as a concept album, there is quite a bit of indication that its creation as such was not premeditated. In January of 1972, Bowie explained it wasn't really started as a concept album. It got kind of broken up because I found other songs that I wanted to put in the album that wouldn't fit in with the story of Ziggy. What you have on that album when it finally comes out is a story which doesn't really take place. It's just a few little scenes from the life of a band called Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, who could feasibly be the last band on Earth because we're living the last 5 years of Earth. Likewise, producer Ken Scott said Ziggy Stardust was never discussed as a concept album from the start. We were recording a bunch of songs, some of which happened to fit together. Some didn't work. However, as Ziggy became a stage show in addition to the album, the pieces were filled in and fans have largely constructed a whole world around Ziggy Stardust, even reconciling those songs which Bowie and Scott did not imagine fitting into the Ziggy narrative. As Bowie admitted, when an artist does his work, it's no longer his. It's just what people make of it. What a great quote. And people have made a lot of Ziggy Stardust. Fans and critics alike have praised the album as one of Bowie's greatest works. It peaked at number 5 in the UK, and while it only hit number 75 in the US, it remained an important influence on American popular music for generations to follow. Magazines and polls have consistently ranked it as one of the best albums of all time, and it was even designated for preservation by the National Recording Registry of the United States in 2017. So what can I say about this record? It's 50 years old. It came out in 1972. It's an absolute masterpiece. What's interesting for me, it was recorded immediately after Hunky Dory, and Hunky Dory and Ziggy Stardust are so different. I mean, there's moments on Hunky Dory, which, maybe Queen Bitch, that make you think what might be coming just like a few days later when they start Ziggy Stardust. But on the whole, Hunky Dory, one of my favorite records, is so diverse in its production, with Life on Mars, with the huge orchestration done by the great Mick Ronson, through to songs like Sillier, but still great songs like Kooks or Andy Warhol. I mean, a masterpiece. But then Ziggy comes out, and it's more complete, even though a couple of the songs are actually written before it, and one of them's a cover. It's definitely one of those albums that makes a statement as a whole. I mean, Hunky Dory does as well. It's incredible. I fully realized it when I moved to America. I come to America and I'm working with a lot of rock artists and punk rock artists. And Ziggy Stardust would come up in conversation all of the time. And I realized how important it was to the glam rock of the 80s in America. All those bands were so heavily influenced by Bowie of, 10 years beforehand. There was all of that. Secondly, all the punks also loved Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. So it really is this massively influential album. Along with the Velvet Underground and Iggy, you throw in Bowie and you get such a huge part of punk rock. And many other artists as well, of course. But you also get glam rock coming out of it. So it's pretty darn influential. And it's a joy to go back and listen to with fresh ears. It's an amazing part of an incredible career by one of the greatest artists that ever lived, David Bowie. Thanks ever so much for watching. There are plenty of other videos that we've done on Bowie's career. So please check those out as well. We've really covered many, many elements from Heroes, from, when he was living in Berlin, and then, of course, Let's Dance from his, 80s period, which, of course, the great Bob Clearmountain worked on. We've covered a lot of stuff. So please check out the links to those as well. Thank you ever so much for watching. I'm sure we'll do more and more Bowie. If you have any other ideas for videos, please put them down below. It could be songs, could be albums, could be artists, could be movements, could be genres, whatever you like. Please put them down below. Thanks ever so much. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, to zines, adio, ciao. Thanks, everybody. So long, farewell. Oh, tschüss, goodbye.